Trish L. Gleason, Assistant City Clerk, you're hereby directed to call a special session of the City Council to be held on Monday, August 21st, 2023 at 5:15 p.m. in the Historic Federal Building for the purpose of conducting a work session on state and federal grant updates.
Good evening and welcome to a special session of the Dubuque City Council for August 21st, 2023. As a reminder to viewers and listeners, due to the nature of tonight's meeting topic, public input is not accepted. However, you can contact the City Council directly from the city's webpage at www.cityofdubuque.org/council-contacts. Attendance tonight is Mayor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Council members Farber.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Resnick.
Here.
Roussel.
Here.
Sprank.
Here.
Wethel.
Here.
City Manager Van Milligan.
Here.
City Attorney Brumwell.
Here.
Originally scheduled were 2 work sessions, but tonight the second work session will be rescheduled for a different evening. Thus, we have the work session for state and federal grant updates.
Thank you, Trish. We will turn it over to you, Terry.
Thank you, Mayor Kavanaugh. Good evening, and good evening, City Council members, City Attorney, Assistant City Clerk, and City Manager and Assistant City Manager. It's great to be here with you this evening, and I'd like to begin first really by thanking you all for your support of the recent congressional staff visit. You know, when we talk about grants and strategic partnerships, those events with our federal staff, both in Washington and in Dubuque, make a huge difference. Dubuque is known for its relationship building with partners at the state and federal level, and it is the tangible sort of evidence that we can't go this alone as a city. We need our partners at the state and federal level. We need our partners in the private sector, and we need our partners in the nonprofit sector as well. So I just want to say thank you. It was wonderful, and to a person, the staff commented on how engaged our city council was throughout the 3 days. So I just want to make sure you know that you're being talked about. So thank you for that. To begin tonight, I do want to just say that I'm going to be speaking, and also Justin Tilchen, who is our grant researcher and analyst, and he will be speaking tonight as well. And also Andy Seth will be with us live from Washington, D.C. Andy, of course, you know, has been working with the city of Dubuque, I think, since 2008. And he has written countless grants for us and has been largely responsible, working with city staff, of course, for delivering significant grants for a myriad activities in the city of Dubuque. So those are the presenters this evening. So I'd like to begin to explain where we are now. As an update, tonight what we're going to go through is the high-level review, which we do every 6 months with you, and this is going to show you where we are, what successful grants we've had, what grants we have pending, and what unsuccessful applications we have submitted. This will be both state and federal grants. And then we want to talk a little bit about the community impact, both in dollars, but also across the different goals and priorities you've established and the master plans you have approved. So that includes the Arts and Culture Master Plan, the Comprehensive Plan, Imagine Dubuque. It also includes our Climate Action Plan, our Equity Plan, and those 5. Those would be the big 5. So just, you know, we look at the impacts and we use those, as Justin has named them, that's our North Star. We use those documents to guide us when we are looking at a grant opportunity and trying to match a project in Dubuque. But something we've not shared with you before that you have this evening, and we'll talk about that later. We gave you the updated PowerPoint, has some changes. But we also gave you our infrastructure spreadsheet, our infrastructure master plan, if you will. And this is something that's been used internally by staff, and it's an organic or living document, and department managers and department staff update it from time to time. And what we've done is identify infrastructure projects in the city of Dubuque, and then we prioritize them. So they're prioritized by readiness, which can include planning, design. They're prioritized by funding levels. If they have funding in the CIP, any funding, no funding, they're already funded, or we're just all we need is funds. So you'll note that there's a category 0, which is projects that have been achieved because we received grants. Category 1, 2, 3, et cetera. So you'll be able to review that. And I will let you know you're going to be getting updated copies of this on a regular basis because they change. Like I said, it's organic, and we've already received additional information this evening from Transportation Department and also from the Leisure Services Department and from the Water Department, Chris Lester. So those will be sent to you tomorrow in an updated spreadsheet. But we just think it's something you want to be aware of and be, be cognizant of the fact that we are looking at this from an information base. So what lies ahead is what we're going to close the presentation with, and that is our strategic planning, our process and timeline. And then we're going to outline some of the challenges and opportunities we see, particularly planning and match dollars. So we'll talk about that tonight. So the federal grants awarded, and I think you know this, we feel that, we opened our first presentation to you, I think in January or early 2021, by sharing with you the city manager's direction, which is you're going to miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So as staff, we take every shot we can if we have a project, even if it's a long shot. But these are the federal grants we've received. I think everyone was thrilled to know that we were the only city our size that received the National Endowment for the Arts Local Arts Agency sub-grant. This really helped so much in pulling our nonprofit arts groups out of the COVID economic decline. So that's just been something we're all very proud of, and I've heard from countless arts organizations how much that means and what a difference it made. We, of course, got the RAISE Planning Grant. Now, not the RAISE grant, but I mean RAISE only, but RAISE Planning. And I know that the engineering department is going to be reporting on that. They are moving forward with that, but we do and hope and anticipate applying for the full RAISE implementation grant next March 1st when it's due. Something you'll hear about later as well is that there's a timeline on these grants. And this next year will be, there'll just be 3 years left of the RAISE opportunity. So when we consider that we need to apply for the grant, receive the grant almost a year later, and then build it in 2 years or obligate the funds, just know that that's a top priority of the 14th Street overpass because of the railroad merger, the complete streets on Elm, the complete streets on 16th, the connection to Schmidt Island, Kerper Boulevard, walking, sidewalk and trail, and the roundabouts, the 5 roundabouts. So that would be a game changer on the north end, and so that's a priority as well. Community-oriented policing, we were able to get grants, hiring grants for 2 additional staff persons who would have both social work and brain health training so that they would then join the staff, and that was also through the Department of Justice. The Safe Streets for All, we had to do a survey. Again, this is a planning grant the feds require that if we're going to improve intersections or improve streets in Dubuque or whatever, we have to demonstrate through data that there's been significant there are significant accidents that have occurred at that location. So that planning is going on right now with our partners at ECIA. Community project funding, I think you know about this. Congresswoman Henson has for three years now had the opportunity to put community project funding in. The first year we received $600,000 for the Veterans Memorial Trail that connects the bridge to the trail. So we'll have a beautiful trail and overlook that will be added to the memorial, and that's moving forward. I think you may be hearing about that, if not on tonight's agenda, on another soon-to-be released agenda, because that's coming up. But last year she was able to get us a $1 million STAG grant for the Granger Creek lift station. And so that has also been, the grant has been submitted now. Once we receive these funds through this, this was formerly known as earmarking, but once we receive the funds, they're actually we actually have to write a grant for it. So Darren Meering on staff did complete the STAG grant information for the EPA Region 7 offices. So that was a great success. And this year, of course, she has included $8 million in the FEMA Homeland Security budget for the gates and pumps. But depending on how the budget process goes in Washington this year, all of those community project dollars could fall out if it's a continuing resolution, if there's a dispute that leaves the budget unresolved. So that is, of course, the gamble we take every year when the Congresswoman puts these dollars in for us, but still these dollars have been great help. In 2023, DOT was able to get the solar panel funding for Todd at the airport, which is huge. I know we just had a tour as part of the congressional staff visit. Community project funding for Granger Creek, I mentioned. DOT lower no emissions bus program, the second round. Last year, we were not successful. This year, we were. So that's good news. And then DOT Areas of Persistent Poverty was just announced, and that's for Joule optimization, and that is to do research to make sure that our routes are addressing those areas that are identified as areas of persistent poverty, and that the routes meet the needs of workers who need transit to work and to achieve prosperity, which aligns with the City of Dubuque's equity plan as well. National Endowment for the Arts, we received in our town, that is Voices, received that fund, and that is to engage the neighborhood in arts programming for underrepresented groups in the community. So that's underway. Good news is, we have another one going in. This time the Art Museum in the Office of Equity is submitting one, so we're going after that one. So as I said, there are 2 NEA grants for our town every year. They're not huge, but they're very good grants, and they are community building grants, and they help our arts groups. So there's another one of those going in as well. Okay, where are we now? Environmental protection, or I'm sorry, these are the applications that are pending. So we have quite a few. We've been busy, and Andy Seth has been busy, and we have as well. The Environmental Protection Agency EPA SWIFR grant, I think you heard about this. This includes a vehicle and recycling carts for everyone in Dubuque. We're waiting, we're hoping to hear by September. FEMA we have an assistance to firefighters grant that's been sitting in Washington for months. We have a DOT solar panel improvement for the aviation terminal this time, and that's also pending. We have a charging and fueling infrastructure electric vehicle charger grant pending. These are the EV charging stations. We'd put 5 charging stations in, starting down by the Wisconsin Bridge, Schmidt Island, going through the downtown and out 61. We did get the support of the Iowa DOT. We're not on their list yet for EV charging stations, but they fully supported our grant with a letter, and they said that they do want to see EV charging stations put into Dubuque because they hope to have 61 and 20 on the next, 61, 151, and 20 on the next round of state EV charging stations, so that we would connect with those. But at this point in time, the benefit we have with the state of Iowa DOT is the fact that Wisconsin is connecting Madison to Dubuque to the Wisconsin Bridge. So that leverages Iowa to, follow suit and make these connections for EV charging stations. This is one of the most exciting grants. It's a forestry grant out of USDA, but we applied, for $5,000 for 1,000 trees a month to be put in. Laura was very involved in this, as were many citizens in the community. This would, it would replace, it has no match. They said no match is required if you work in your most challenged census tracts. So we are working downtown where the canopy, I think, is what, Laura, 2 or 3% downtown as opposed to the rest of town. So again, it's been denuded in part by the emerald ash borer, also by the Dutch elm disease years ago, and people who have the least ability to protect themselves from these increasing temperatures that we're experiencing this week, need trees. And so this would be both partnership with Trees Forever, probably led by Trees Forever with city staff assisting, but also our Leisure Services Department is engaged, but also there are just a number of citizens who have stepped up who want to be engaged. So we're hoping, but I heard it's just been terribly oversubscribed, and we are competing with Cedar Rapids, and they had the derecho. So just know there's this other bit of politics that goes on with federal grants, and that is frequently agencies don't say this, and it isn't written down anywhere, but if they have X number of grants, they might say, okay, divide that by 50. How many can each state receive? and then they try to stay pretty close to that. Sometimes it's 1, sometimes it's 2. I know with the Raise Planning Grant, it was just Dubuque and I think Burlington, or Dubuque and, I'm not sure, Waterloo, I'm not sure, but just 2 of us. So this can be the same. There's so many tree grants that are being sought after. So, but that's an exciting opportunity, and it hasn't happened in 100 years. Department of Transportation, the Resilient Operations, the Protect grant we just submitted Friday. That was a new grant, and it's only a one-time deal. And it is to build resiliency into transportation. We applied for the 17th and Locust Street corridor, which is phase 12 of the B branch project. And it is to, you know, how water and cars and people can be washed down that particular corridor. It is also an evacuation route should there ever be an overtopping or a breach of the flood wall. So we have applied for that as a part of our resiliency in Dubuque and making the community more resilient against disaster. So it would help us. And that's a shovel-ready project that's in your sheet that is all ready to go. And all we need is the funding to put it in place. So that has adds points as well. I think, you know, I told you about the Our Town grant, the second Our Town grant, and of course, we do have the Economic Development Administration EDA grant we submitted last week too. So we're applying at every opportunity. EDA called us and said, we're so sorry that we had you send back that $2.5 million. Could you please apply for a bigger grant? And put in $7.7 million. We have been very transparent with them about the fact that there is this other funding in the budget that is, we don't know if that's a certainty, but they're hoping that they could help us too, and it would be challenging, but we're not sure we could use both of the funds at the same time, but we can talk about that later because some federal agencies don't match up with other federal funds. So that's something we'll deal with if we're ever so fortunate as to have that challenge. Unsuccessful grants. This is a heartbreaker for Councilwoman Farber because we work so hard. And she was just recently at a conference and said the same thing happened. But you know how we are trying so desperately to connect people to the internet and to broadband. We learned about the real gaps in technology during COVID. They were horrible for so many children and families trying to work. And we want to connect, and the City Council has worked to connect everyone to broadband. But the maps that the state provides that define who can apply for a grant, those maps do not include census tract if it has like one connection. So if a Quick Star, a Quick Stop, or a Dairy Queen has a connection to broadband, they say, oh, that census tract is taken care of. And they do not provide grants. So we have been fighting tooth and nail. We do know that our federal grant was well received. We know we met with them in Washington. They said it scored very high, but we must have been just on the cusp of either getting one or not getting one. That's what he had suggested in our meeting. So we're disappointed. We're not going to stop working at it, and talk to Dave Lyons again today, and our partner at GDDC, and he helps with this as well as Chris Coleman and Dave Ness. So we're working on it, but we're still ahead of the curve with our council-led directive to connect every home in Dubuque through IMON. So that's the good news there. The low no emissions bus program that we received this year, we didn't receive last year. So like I said, even if we get a no, we keep going back. And then reconnecting communities. We had proposed a grant that would connect Kerper Boulevard and the Sutton Pool with a pedestrian and bike overpass down over the tracks, just in an early attempt to address the merger and try to get people moving over the tracks. That was not accepted. They went for much larger projects. So just so you know, we don't get everyone, but we do get more than we don't, which is good. Again, state grants, and this is a little different because, you know, the governor received about more than $1 billion in ARPA money from the state. You know, just like the city of Dubuque received $27 million, the county of Dubuque received. Part of that legislation in ARPA was that every state would also get an allotment. So there was $1 billion in there. The governor has focused largely on rural areas, and that means not the 11 largest cities in the state, although we have been successful, and I think we need to count, you know, that as a win. You'll see there that we did get funding for the box hangar out at the airport. This is critical. You know, we do still have private jets, general aviation at the airport. That's a big bonus. Child care, you know, sort of was a winner in Dubuque. Dubuque with state grants. There was the funds that went to the Medline project, I call it, but where all the partners are working with the multiple employer daycare out on the west side. That's going to be super important. Child care for Cottingham and Butler and the Project Stork down at the downtown at their location, and I think in conjunction with the Art Museum. Destination Iowa, we have 2 grants, Chaplain Schmidt Island Amphitheater, of course, and the Dubuque Museum of Art. Nonprofit innovation, Hills and Dales received $1 million, and that was a tremendous boost for them. I've been out to visit with Jack Mesher, and he's so grateful, and they're working on an autism care center that's going to be located on the west side in their new Grand River Medical building. Iowa Thriving Communities is just new news, and that's great news. We did receive that, and the Iowa Economic Development Innovation Grant, the LIHTC Innovation Grant, was also successful for Michelle Michalakis' program. So those are some of the state grants that we were awarded. And we continue to work with our state legislators and our state partners at agencies on that as well. So where we are now, I'm going to turn this over to Justin Tilchen.
Thank you, Terry. Good evening, Council, Mayor and Council and staff. My name is Justin Tilchen, a technical grant analyst and assistant in the city manager's office. So just want to give an update here on numbers since we last provided our update. As you can see here from the ARPA, or American Rescue Plan Act, through grants, sort of that largest chunk so far has been the $74 million. So that includes things like the shuttered venue, everything back from shuttered venue, all the COVID activities, restaurant revitalization, as well as many other ARPA-related opportunities. So our total grants there received was just over the $74 million. The direct allotment to the city was approximately about the $27 million. And then so far with the bipartisan infrastructure law, we are at $6.3 million in grants. And so when you total all that up, that gives us the $108 million received within the city and our partners and residents. And then the county funds that were allocated is that $15.7 million. So when you look at the complete and total impact of ARPA, bill, and other competitive grant programs to our community, it's over $123 million. So it's some impressive opportunities that we've been able to seize on. So our approach, as Terry mentioned, you know, we definitely, we call our North Star team sort of the 5 action plans. So through both, through all of our work and with the built infrastructure team, but also our human infrastructure team, we're always strategically pursuing these grant opportunities. We evaluate anything that's relevant for our community. And then we also meet with city staff and our human infrastructure teams to evaluate those opportunities. So in doing so, we are assessing each of these opportunities to make sure that they fall under the city council goals and priorities that you've set, as well as emphasizing our equity practices, our poverty reduction and climate action plans, and then utilizing the Imagine Dubuque Master Comprehensive Plan, as well as our arts and culture plans. So all of those go into our grant applications when they're relevant. Oftentimes we get partners that come to us for different grant opportunities, and they'll come to us oftentimes with elements of the city council goals and priorities in there, or from the Imagine Dubuque plan written right into their grants, which they're using then to validate the needs, the community needs, and the work that they're proposing through their grants. So it's great to see. So we do host our monthly meetings here with the built infrastructure team, and that's primarily our city staff, as well as our regional transportation director from ECIA, Chandra Ravada. And so through that group, we work through that master infrastructure plan list that you have printed for you this evening. So from your council goals and priorities, that master infrastructure plan then gets built, and then we can work from there, and that helps us prioritize where we need to find additional funds and support with grant funds. Then we have our human infrastructure team that also meets monthly. This is some city staff, but a lot of local nonprofit organizations and leaders throughout the community. Now there we also work in alignment with the city council goals and priorities, as well as those 5 master plans of our North Star team. Then beyond that, we do have the topic teams. I know you've heard about this, and we've shown you these graphics before, but these are the individual teams that then work on specific topics. So anything from roads to trails to brain health to food systems, there's 28 different topics there. Most of those teams some of them meet regularly, but they're all sort of intended to be activated should there be a grant opportunity that becomes available. So we are very fortunate to have an excellent community that's involved in partnership with us. So that's a helpful component. And just to go over a little bit of timeline, because it does get a little complicated and there's some overlap, and that's where I think Terry mentioned sort of the strategic approach. So with the RAISE grant, where we received a RAISE grant, then we skipped a year, and now we're looking at implementation. And we sort of measure that between all the other Department of Transportation grants that we're submitting. So when we put in the PROTECT grant, we're also evaluating how that might play with the Department of Transportation. So the American Rescue Plan Act, those dollars have some hard deadlines because they were allocated through to states, and most of that funds were allocated through states and local communities. So they were given a hard deadline to allocate those funds, or local governments have to allocate and dedicate those funds to a project by December 31st of 2024. And then they have a performance period, or they can spend down those dollars for up to an additional 2 years. And so those ARPA dollars then will need to be spent by December 31st of 2026. Then the bipartisan infrastructure law, which was also signed into law in 2021, just after the American Rescue Plan Act. That one then is allocating their funding over the next 5 years. So we're in sort of that first phase of funding through bipartisan infrastructure law now, and then we'll be having some additional rounds of funding through some programs through bipartisan infrastructure law over the next 5 years. And then lastly, we had the Inflation Reduction Act, which was signed into law here in August of this year, August of 2022, and that those have spending in different programs that all have different timelines as well to them. So they range anywhere from 1 to 5 years, depending on the program there. Then grants ahead, grants in progress and what we're expecting. I will turn that over to Terry.
Okay. Thanks, Justin. Thank you very much. And Justin's really, I just have to tell a story. So this week he found a grant because he's constantly looking for grants, and it seemed to fit, he thought, Hillcrest, okay? Because we do have this human infrastructure meeting every month, and there are a lot of nonprofits that attend, and we tell them, look, we're not just looking for grants for the city. We are a community. We're a city writ large, so we want to help our partners. And Justin found a grant, and he sent it to Hillcrest, said, just letting you know, we saw this, it sounds like it might be something that would work for you. They wrote back a lovely note recognizing, Justin's initiative and interest in creating partnerships with nonprofits. So I just want you to know that's the kind of thing that, goes on every day in our little office. Anyway, I want to recognize Justin for that. What's ahead? Okay, so we are looking at the SMART grant. We had a meeting on the SMART grant today. The SMART grant would help to fund the streets program, the last phases of the streets program. So it's very important because so much is invested in that already. So Chandra Ravada is going to be working with us on that, along with our engineers, many of whom are in the room tonight, but they're going to be working on that going forward. We'd like to get that in. I think it's due in October. We also have the RAISE grant, as I said, that's going to be March of next year, and we're hoping we can get enough planning done. It's our hope, and I know it's going to be a push. I just think, and I think Andy Seth, who is our consultant, really believes this next year is going to be critical to make application for that. So we're going to do our best to get to a point where we can apply for it, because if we wait one more year, get another, you can see based on the timeline that's been shared with you, it's not going to be possible for us to finish that project in time. Department of Energy, EECBG, Gina Bell and Amanda Lewis are working very hard. This is actually almost an entitlement that we'll receive to work on energy projects, and Assistant City Manager Corey Burbach supervised these doing the ARRA program, the ARRA program during the Obama administration, and hopefully we can come up with some really good projects to use this funding on in our community and that are aligned with your priorities. FRA, railroad crossings, just finished that quiet zone. We're so happy, and the railroad grants are being announced now. They're going to be coming out this fall. So Andy Seth, who will be with us, we had a meeting today with our city engineers about this and how do we approach it? How do we approach prioritizing which of the 12 intersections are going to be funded for railroad crossings, et cetera. And so that was on their brownfields. We can't apply for a brownfield grant until we spend down the $800,000 multi-purpose grant we've had. We're getting very close to that right now. We had a report on that today from Steve Brown, who's been working on that with Jill Connors. Then the traffic safety funds will come out as a result of the Safety for All, Safe Streets for All. We'll be able to apply to improve some of our unsafe areas in the community. And then the DNR, U.S. Fish and Wildlife boating infrastructure grants. Bob Schizel's been overseeing that with dredging for the marinas. So that big grant, we were successful in receiving $1 million from that grant back in like 2005, I think, that built the transient dock. So that's a U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service grant that is funded, if the funds flow through the Iowa DNR. So those are some of the grants that are coming up. I'm going to turn it over now. Andy, are you on?
I am on. So hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. This is Andy Seth with Sustainable Strategies DC. Two things that as you are looking ahead just are very important for mayor and the city council just to get your head around. One is match and one is design engineering. And on match, all of these grants that we're talking about at the federal level, be it from the infrastructure bill or the Inflation Reduction Act or even just regular appropriations, they're going to require some level of match, anywhere from 1-to-1, to as little as 20%. But having that money in your pocket so that when you apply, we can make the commitment that the match dollars will be there is what we need to be competitive for these dollars. So just looking ahead, always budgeting some match as we are chasing these grant opportunities. And the next is just project planning. What they want to see are projects that are more ready. They want shovels in the ground sooner, not later. And sometimes there is design engineering money available competitively. Oftentimes there is not. So they want to see that the city has invested in that design and engineering, that you've got construction documents, that you've been through the environmental process, that you're ready to go, and that they're going to have an investment, they're going to create jobs quick. So that is two things that Dubuque can keep doing. As Justin and Terry said, for a lot of these programs, we're in year 1, year 2, depending on the program. We're going to have 2 to 3 more bites at the apple. So just getting ready and having match to support those projects as we keep chasing these dollars. If you can go to the next slide. Two things that Dubuque does better than any of the cities that I work with across the country. One is relationship building, and 2 is the ducks that you line up internally. So these projects are going to require political support You've got a great delegation that will get behind your projects, but you just need to educate them, keep them in the loop, and keep pushing for your funds at the agencies. So those relationships with the White House, with the agencies, with the states to weigh in on your behalf, super, super important. So those visits that you make to DC, critical. And then just the planning that you keep doing internally with the plans that we can point to that these projects align with, the partnerships, the stakeholders that are willing to write letters of support. And it just makes the grant writing so much easier when you've got great projects with great political support, with great community backers that really align with where the community wants to go. I'll kick it back to you, Terry.
Thank you, Andy. And I want to end and give the council some time to ask questions, but just one point of emphasis here. We had the unfortunate situation this year where there were trails grants we could have applied for at the state level, REAP grant and other trails grants, but we just don't have match. And I just want you to know that when you're thinking about goal setting this week, you know, we are, and I will say that there are opportunities for match to be found. I think it's a question, though, of just understanding that sometimes there are grants. You may hear other communities receiving grants in some areas where we're not. So there are those occasions, not typically for these big items. But trails are becoming a big item, I think, too. So, you know, for so many of our younger workforce members and some of our retirees. So I just wanted to point that out. That's where the match comes in. And as Andy said, we were lucky that the trees grant didn't require a match. We were like, yes, we can apply for this. I'm sure that's why everyone did. But I'd like to turn it over. We do have some engineers and other city staff here tonight. If you have questions on that infrastructure list, feel free to ask or about anything else.
All right, well, thank you very much. Terry, Justin, Andy, all three of you. It was a very helpful presentation. Questions? Discussion? Ms. Farber, go ahead.
Yeah. You mentioned, well, first off, thank you for the shout out about the ITC committee and regarding the next steps. We're working on it diligently, as you know. And so this is an organization committee for the National League of Cities that works on telecom issues. And we're actually working on the broadband map and kind of how we are in no man's land because of that. We're working on AI and we're working on universal service. And so I'm happy to share the dialogue, and Chris Coleman has just been wonderful in that sharing as well. You did mention about the percent that we need of match grants, or that we need the match dollars available. Do you have a range of funds? How do we identify what those match dollars can be? And maybe that's between you and Mike, I don't know.
No, I think we always discuss this, and Mike is aware of it from the get-go. When we're going for a significant grant, he's aware of it, and we usually can find the match or work the match. Some of the grants allow staff time to be matched, so labor's considered match, so we can work that way. But just want you to be aware of it, that, you know, that's out there. Grants, my goodness, and as Andy said, transportation grants typically are 20, but what we found during RRA is that even though 20% was the match, they wouldn't really consider your grant unless you had 40% match. Now, it's not that way now, thank goodness, because there's so many transportation grants, but that's just one example. But 20% typically. Andy, is that correct?
Yeah, and you know, the match dollars can be up there. If we're chasing a $20 million project, that's $4 million a match. And we're going to have some big ticket items that we're going to be chasing over the years. So great to get the 80%, but the 20% needs to be budgeted too.
Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, go ahead, Mike.
Mike Van Milligan, City Manager. You'll know that we're in a very envious position from a debt capacity. We're in the 40% range of using our statutory debt limit. And also we have access to the Iowa Finance Authority State Revolving Loan Fund borrowing opportunities, which is extremely, extremely low interest. And so a lot of our matching opportunities, we would end up recommending using debt to match it. So we wouldn't actually budget, let's say, $4 million for a grant we might or might not get. and have that $4 million sit there and have to have come from somewhere already. But we would, if we would commit to creating in the application, we would commit to having the match. And if we were to get the grant, we would access the match through debt.
Okay, thank
Not in every case, but in most of them, and certainly the big ones.
Well, and I know, and Mike is correct, I mean, SRF has been used obviously for water projects very successfully in the past and would be in the future. And those are some of the big ticket, it's transportation and water infrastructure are the big ones.
Sure. Okay, well, thank you for that explanation. Appreciate it.
Ms. Roussel.
Thank you. Terry, thanks. Your team is truly amazing, and you bring so many great benefits to our community and our citizens. So thank you all for your work. One thing that was of interest to me, you talked about traffic safety funds. And I wondered if they could be used for things like traffic calming in areas where we have speeding concerns. Is that related to that grant, or is that maybe too deep of a question for that?
Andy, do you want to answer that? I'm not sure that it could be used for that, but Andy, do you have information?
Yeah, there's the Safe Streets grant. So if you're pointing at that as a safety issue in your community, then we can chase implementation projects related to that. Traffic calming is often, eligible, a competitive factor of many of the Department of Transportation grants. They want to improve safety. There's some very specific ones that we can chase, but it's not a single grant. There are several opportunities that we can look at.
That's good to know. Thank you.
Well, thank you for raising that, because obviously it's been an issue at council this year in a number of places, and that's something we can look for.
Ms. Wethel.
I just want to say that as someone who's the newest member of council, I had a lot to learn and a lot of growth that I needed to gain quickly in how processes work and how we are given the opportunity to approach funding outside of our taxpayers' dollars directly here in Dubuque. And one thing that was incredibly impressive to me is the skill, knowledge, experience of our current employees in your department, what you do, what you bring to the table. And so when we talk about workforce in our city and investing in people, we invest in people like you, and you help taxpayers grow our economy, beautify our city, help with our infrastructure. And so I'm not speaking of you as an investment, but you know what I mean. I have been incredibly impressed with the work that you do, because you help not just our city, but as you note, the non-for-profit organizations too. So thank you for your work and for the questions always answered when I ask them, but your networking and ability to connect us with those programs and opportunities is extraordinary.
Well, thank you, Councilwoman Wethel. I have to say this is shared. I mean, Andy Seth, I think he's written a dissertation worth of grants for Dubuque or two since he started with us, how many years ago. As I said, Justin is very resourceful with a huge passion for helping nonprofits. But in addition, these engineers and transportation staff, the staff in every department, like we triage. I mean, Justin and I frequently triage with Andy, listening. We connect them with the teams that Justin has set up. But everyone has so much work that they do every day anyway, and then we pull them out and say, hey, can you come to this meeting for XYZ grant? And can we just get together and huddle? And then Andy listens and we brainstorm what project, what would be the priority, how would we write it, how much would it cost? And it's just amazing, the city staff that we have the privilege of working with. I mean, it's just amazing. And so I just want to make sure we share that, that compliment with all these folks at the city, because it's a great team.
Team effort. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Sprague, yeah.
Quick question. Thank you. Terry, as always, thank you for everything that you do for us. Of course, you find ways to build projects. I'm thinking in the opposite direction. We now have, we have some project, communities are getting faced with all of a sudden, they're getting stuck with having to dismantle or tear down buildings, whether it's churches, schools that are slum and blight. Are there any grants? Have you been aware of anything like that where they're helping cities where all of a sudden they're stuck with something that they didn't intend to inherit?
I have not, but again, I'll defer to the expert. Andy, are you aware of any grants that would pay for deconstruction of old, dangerous buildings? We recently, you probably saw in the national news, a building in Davenport collapsed in Davenport, Iowa, and there, people were injured and death occurred. So is there anything?
Depending, you can always use your CDBG dollars for those buildings in the CDBG eligible census tracts. There are certainly brownfield dollars that can help you remediate some buildings that are in environmentally sensitive areas, and potentially economic development administration dollars if you're going to create jobs in those places. Areas. So depending on the project, depending on what is next, it creates some opportunities for funding.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Resnick.
Thank you. So again, I have a match question, and my original question was as answered about do we need to match in the bank? Because the Moody's just upgraded us, and one of the things they said is that we have a great potential for raising funds if we need to. And my question to you is, have we ever refrained from writing an important grant application because we didn't have the match?
No, I'm not suggesting any important priority project of council. If there was a challenge with match, that goes straight to the manager, and the manager has never failed to be able to come up with an answer, or staff. As I said, we'll find a way. Andy helps us, again, if there are other ways to match a grant. I just think we noticed this year with the Trails grants, we were just, and these are not large grants, these are not considered high priority projects that we were dealing with, because we have several grant or trail projects, as you know. One of the trail projects, though, that we do have out on the Southwest Arterial, the match should be steep on that because that's a big project, but our bigger problem is it needs to connect. It needs to connect to something or it's not legitimate, right, Andy? I mean, you have to get from somewhere to somewhere. So what we need to do is connect the Southwest Arterial, I think, up a Chavanel, and we have to also connect it, and Bob Shizzles here and Steve Brown, I think, but you know, we have to connect it then to the Bellevue route, or the Mines of Spain route that goes to Bellevue. So it isn't always just match that prevents us from accessing trails money.
Thank you. And I just think it's ironic a little bit that, you know, when we have these many opportunities that we can take advantage, you know, these times of many opportunities is also, it can be, as Mr. Van Milligan talked about, kind of a strain on our deficit reduction plan because we need those match dollars. And so, you know, the time, we have to pick our time to strike. And as the former mayor mentioned, when we were up to almost 90%, you know, that's when we were getting lots of money to come in to improve our community. And then it cooled down a little bit, and we've gotten our debt down again. And now we have these great opportunities. I'm just hoping that there's not a match that kind of way, that we can somehow take these opportunities without stretching what I think has been a very productive deficit reduction plan, and Moody's would agree with me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
No, I cannot say that there's ever been a major project that we wrote a grant for that did not have match, that there is not match found for. But I will suggest that we have unprecedented opportunity right now. I mean, between the American Rescue Plan Act, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, and the Inflation Reduction Act, there are huge opportunities for the city to not just recover from COVID and the economic downturn we experienced, but also to build for the future. You know, we look at the kind of climate we're seeing right now. For whatever reason, people on the coastlines are going to be moving inland in the next 50 years. And there have to be cities in the Midwest that are ready to bring young people in, a new workforce, have housing. And I think Dubuque is doing everything under your leadership as mayor and council to make Dubuque that kind of place where people want to come. I have a new neighbor. They just moved in across the street. They're from Philadelphia. And they wanted to move back to Iowa to be closer to a mother in Waterloo, but they chose Dubuque to live in so they can be close, but they're also very excited to be here. And I think, you know, that's the kind of welcoming community we want to be. And I think that these opportunities to tap into funds make us a better, more vibrant, a safer, and more inclusive community, which is, I believe, the vision that you all have shared with us, and that's our directive from the city manager to help make it that way.
Well, finally, I wanted to say thank you very much. I've written a few grants, and I remember when the deadlines come, I'm nervous about that. And when they're announcing, I'm nervous about that. I was a nervous wreck. So you have so many things going on. I just don't know. You know, you just smile through it. And
what choice do we have, Dave? You probably did too. But no, we have terrific, I just can't even say enough about city staff. We have tremendous partners in the nonprofit world, but again, Justin does a tremendous job. It's fun working with him, but Andy Seth has been a real prize, and we're fortunate to have him. I think his clients all over the country, and we're very grateful to have the relationship we do with Andy, because he knows Dubuque probably as well as any of us do, and probably knows more from writing these grants. So thank you, though. Thank you very much, Councilman Resnick.
So first of all, thank you very much. Andy, great to see you again. Thank you very much for spending the time with us tonight. I would just echo everything. The work that is done in your office is incredible. I mean, this is, when you look around Dubuque, there are just fingerprints of all the things that you're doing everywhere for generations now. So thank you for that. And we're obviously not done, still moving forward. So question about going back to the matching dollars and the planning. This may be an Andy question, actually. One of the things that I'm wondering is, you know, you said that Dubuque is well positioned. Mike pointed out that we're well positioned from a debt standpoint, from a financing standpoint. We've been able to pull this off before. We haven't had to say no because of match dollars in the past. But if we're looking at the way that things look now, based on this enormous amount of money and enormous amount of opportunity that's in, you know, all these different acts or these laws that were passed, how do we need to do things differently? So we're doing things well. We've done things well for years, but are other cities doing something that we could emulate when it comes to planning? When it comes to, we already talked about setting aside match, so I kind of want to focus on the preparing and the planning piece of this. Is there something else that you see, Andy, when you're working with other cities, or ways that we might be able to, sort of supercharge what we're doing here?
I would just put your foot on the gas of design and engineering. And I will say that in some cities, when the infrastructure bill rolled out and they wanted to fund shovel-ready projects, huge opportunity in front of those cities. They did not have projects that were at, even 0% anything. They were in idea generation mode, and they lost the first year. They've lost the second year, and they're catching up. And certainly the back years are going to have a lot of people chasing these dollars, just because people will be designing, engineering, and getting ready for these dollars. But keep just advancing the readiness of these projects as fast as you can, in that let's apply early if we're a little too early for the exact sweet spot, but keep advancing even beyond the grant deadline. And let's chase it again and again. And you might be at 30% this year. You might be at 60% next year. Keep going, just because you're going to be where they want you to be, given whatever the competition is, sooner or later. So don't let projects sit on the shelf. Push forward.
That's really helpful, Andy. Thank you. I think that's it takes a level of courage in some ways that is a little bit foreign, I think, to a lot of people. I think to be able to say that we need to, like you said, put your foot on the gas to be able to do this and move through the design phase and make sure that we're ahead of the curve on some of these things, I think is hard for us to do. It's hard for everybody to do, but I think it's exactly what this really requires. Go ahead.
No, I just want to point out, and Andy wrote this as well with city staff, but the Tiger Grant that we received in the first round of the Tiger Grant program, which is now called RAISE, grant. That was a $5.7 million grant, and, we just announced this 801 Jackson project. But, the manager and council had this relationship with the few developers that had the old empty buildings in the Millwork District, and Vision 2010 identified the Millwork District as one of its top 10 projects, and we sit there and it's the chicken and the egg. But the city needs to provide, Mike said, the city has to provide that infrastructure, the streets, the water, the sewer, the broadband, blah, 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 you gotta have that. And then the developers feel that they have been permission to invest in their property because the city has provided those pieces of infrastructure. But look what that $5.7 million has leveraged in the past 12 years. I mean, thinking about it today, just reading, catching up on newspapers from last week when I was out of town, I thought, wow, I mean, just think about what has happened down there. It's tremendous. And the city's been a full partner in that success. I mean, the very first building was launched with a $10 million grant from HUD for the Caradco building. I mean, that was funding that went to that so that we'd have a successful launch on the first building to trigger the second building, the third building. Now we've had a fourth building, fifth building, and it's continuing. So there's this leveraging effect that these federal and state grants have. When you think about $5.7 million, what it's leveraged in the Millwork District, when we think about those very first brownfield grants and IMLS grants that we had for the Northport that leveraged $800 million, it's just, yes, keep the foot on the pedal, but we have to do it with eyes wide open because we do have to constantly be conscious of our debt and of our obligation to the citizens as a whole. But these are our tax dollars. I just wanted to tell you, the funds that we get in grants from the state and the federal government are all of our tax dollars. So it's a way of saying, you know what? We have a project that's meritorious, and we're going to be competitive, and we're going to go for it, and we're going to put our best foot forward and compete with the rest of them and hope that we're successful. So we're just not going to miss. We're not going to miss one of those shots to win. So,
yeah. Thanks for that, Terry. So one last point that I want to make before we wrap up the work session is it goes back to you had a slide here about relationships. Fostering strong relationships and why those matter. And we've given some very due credit to you and your staff, but then also the entire City of Dubuque staff and the relationships that you built on this. But I actually want to talk to us up here for a moment and make sure that we recognize the importance of that too. There was a moment last year, or earlier this year in March, when we took a trip to Washington, D.C. for the Dubuque Regional Chamber fly-in, and our entire City Council was there to be able to say, to sit at the table and talk to our congressional delegation, other folks in Congress, other people within federal departments, to be able to say, we are representing Dubuque, and we're here to be able to build this relationship with you and talk about the needs that we have as a community. That makes an impression. Mm-hmm. I mean, that is an impression that people still talk about to this day when I get a chance to speak with them on other opportunities to go to Washington or other conferences. And the fact that we not only serve on so many different boards here within the community, which I know all of us do because we divvy that up, but then also the fact that we serve, several of us are able to serve on statewide boards and national boards to be able to talk about the needs that we have there. I cannot stress enough how important that is. It's one of the things that I learned almost immediately in this role of mayor, is that those relationships truly, truly matter. And the fact that we are building those relationships and doing it so successfully and being able to make this impression in people of what Dubuque is and how Dubuque looks, and we invite people to Dubuque. Not only, you had another picture on here, a bunch of, I know folks from the EPA who were here for the Growing Sustainable Communities Conference last year. And those opportunities are very, very important, and I know that sometimes I'm not sure that everyone in the community fully recognizes how important it is for us to reach outside the community to get what we need here. So thank you very much for doing that as a council. This city council honestly is serving very well in that regard, and I'm very proud of that and happy to be serving with you on that. But as Andy pointed out, it's foot on the gas time. It's time that we keep moving this forward and make sure that we are continuing to build those relationships so that we can make sure that we're building this community that we want to build for the next generation. Well, thank you very much for this work session. This was very, very helpful. It was a great discussion. There being no further business in the work session, we will end that.